at 5:30. We're now joined by Kyle Kallander, the commissioner of the Big South Conference on SicEm 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Kyle, thank you very much for your time today. Do you think that we're in a calming pattern, kind of everything letting the dust settle when it comes to college athletics, or is it something that every day you look at your phone or your emails or someone calls you and you never know what's going to happen?
Maybe all of the above. You know that maybe publicly there's some calm and things have settled down a little bit, but you know that underneath the surface, the ducks are paddling as hard as they can. So there's no question there's ongoing conversation and evaluation at this point in time. I do hope that cooler heads are prevailing here and that people can kind of settle down, take a look, and take some time to understand really what's the best thing to do moving forward.
When last year Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC almost a year ago occurred, and then just a week or so ago when USC and UCLA occurred in the Big Ten in that story, did you know immediately there could be a trickle-down effect, not just with those Power 5 and Autonomy 5 conferences, but somehow could also eventually and has reached the Big South?
Well, you always are concerned about that, and you always feel like, yes, there will be trickle-down. We haven't, obviously the Big 12 made their move, and there was some move in the Group of Five in response to that. There has been movement below that. We've been impacted, although it's not necessarily directly related to those moves. But anytime there's movement, there is a trickle-down effect. And one of the things that I chuckle about a little bit is, you hear that there's some concern on the part of some of the major conferences about how big Division I is getting, but part of it's self-inflicted, right? The larger they become, then the stealing begins, and pretty soon conferences are looking around and saying, well, where am I going to get more members? And you got to go to Division II. So that just expands Division I even further. So it is all a process. There's no question there's a trickle down. I was just having a conversation with another commissioner this morning about the latest Big Ten Pac-12 movement and wondering what that trickle down now is going to look like. And I think this could have even bigger ramifications in that regard in terms of the kind of change in movement that you're going to see.
Can anybody trust anybody else right now, or do you feel like that because obviously these stories in the last year have popped, and even those sometimes even on their own campuses didn't know? Yeah,
and trust is a tricky word. At least in my chair, I don't sit here and blame other commissioners for the movement that's happening. You understand. We've all been in the same position. We've all invited schools and brought in schools from other leagues. We've been impacted both ways. So you understand it to a point, but the thing that concerns me is that the action that's taking place is really to the detriment of college sports generally. And again, you understand the finances behind it, but at the same time, the more you move to the larger conferences, the super conferences, as it were, the more that you have other schools that are going to have a tougher time competing. And I just don't think that's healthy. And one of the things that I am really concerned about, and this is kind of putting my old Southwest Conference hat on a little bit from way back when, is you lose the rivalries. You lose a lot of what's special about college athletics. So, the Oklahoma-Nebraska rivalry went by the wayside a long time ago, Kansas-Missouri, Texas A&M. And again, I'm not sitting here saying, well, gosh, we need it the way it used to be. But at the same time, I think the more that we go down this path, the more we're kind of eating our young here. And I just get really concerned about the future of college athletics and its distinctiveness from the professional model. I think those lines are more and more blurred all the time, and I just really worry about what it's going to look like ultimately.
You were the last commissioner the last year of the Southwest Conference, which eventually became the Big 12, with the Big 8 and Southwest Conference combining, and others were left out in the cold. What was that year like, watching, like it's like in sports terms, kind of almost a funeral?
The end was for sure. You know, the last few months, that really was kind of what we were doing, because we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with the intellectual property of the Southwest Conference, what we were going to be doing with all our records, our paraphernalia. It was like an estate sale at that point in time. You know, we went into it, and you know, I obviously eyes wide open. They named me the last commissioner. There weren't a lot of people around to choose from, quite frankly, but the Southwest Conference had such an amazing history, you know, in so many positive ways, that I want to be positive about it. I wanted to really celebrate the history of the Southwest Conference, and our membership wanted to do that as well. And so we had a great year. You know, we went into it. We had big celebrations. We brought people back to the football media day. You know, Sammy Bach came out of you know, his hibernation and joined us, which was, I don't think people had seen him for a long time. So, you know, we really looked back on the history of the conference and really had a great celebration, you know, going into the year. We had tremendous competition and performance in football. Our basketball tournament in Reunion Arena was probably the best it's been from an attendance standpoint, you know, in many years. So in many ways, it was really a great year. But then you kind of got to the end where you knew you were counting the days, and it got to be a little bit strange.
You immediately moved into your position now, I think 25th or 6th year in the Big South. How much of that experience of what you saw that last year, how much of that have you used in running the conference you run now for a quarter of a century?
Well, it was a great experience for me. And again, I knew exactly what I was getting into. It was a one-year gig, right? But to be able to sit in the chair where you're having to make those decisions, you're negotiating television contracts, you're selling sponsorships, you're working with the ADs and presidents. It was an invaluable experience for me. And that's how, you know, in addition to the celebration, I knew that personally I would be able to benefit just from an experience standpoint. So I was really able to take some of those learnings and the skills that I got from that last year and apply it here. I was actually fairly young when I got this job, and I think I was 38 years old, and it really served me well. And it's been great. I mean, the Big South Conference has been a wonderful league to be a part of. The people here have been tremendous to work with. You know, everybody's been supportive of what we've been trying to accomplish, and over that 26 years, we've been able to do a few things. So I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have the career that I've had.
When you mentioned some of the rivalries, and there have been rivalries that have just obliterated, and Nebraska OU just started theirs back again last year. We know A&M and Texas haven't played. It's been a decade, and now that might, of course, that be rejuvenated with the SEC coming up in a couple of years or whenever that happens. And then, you know, you hear about just the fundamentals, the tradition, the history, the atmosphere of college sports, whatever else. And when you say that, or when I say that, or anyone says that, they're almost like hammered about, you know, things change. And we understand that. Typewriters became now laptops, et cetera. 8-track now is whatever we have. Do you kind of get offended like I do when someone says, well, that things do change? Aren't there certain things maybe that shouldn't?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course things change. You know, frankly, I was a proponent of name, image, and likeness well before it became, you know, the latest term. Now, I don't really support going as far as it has with endorsements, and of course not in favor of boosters being involved. But I've always felt student athletes should be able to benefit from their name, image, and likeness in some way. So I understand change, and change is important. But again, if we're really thinking about college athletics and what's special about college athletics that's different from the professional level, if we want to protect that collegiate model and the distinctiveness, rivalries, that's one of the things that I think makes it special. You know, people, you see it down there, you see it in the SEC and all over the country. I mean, there's nothing that gets the blood going and gets people more interested than the great rivalry. And, you know, before I went to the Southwest Conference, I was at the University of Washington. That's my alma mater. And so now to see what's happening there, and granted, the Apple Cup and the Washington State rivalry is much bigger, but I was there in the late 80s, early 90s with Don James in football, and those games against USC were unbelievable. But now that's going away. So, it's sad in a lot of ways to see that. So I just think we need progress is always going to take place. Things are going to change, but let's not lose sight of the fact that, there's some things that are worth keeping. And let's not again throw the baby out with the bathwater.
You mentioned Washington. I was going to bring that up. As an alum, what do you want to see with them?
At this point, because we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I think you'd like to see, retain a lot of the same relationships and same rivalries, but at the same time, how can you're going to have to do something. I don't think the Pac-10 Pac-12, Pac-10 now, can stand pat. But at the same time, I would hate to see the Washington States and the Oregon States get left behind, or Washington for that matter. So I'm not sure what the answer is. It's kind of a challenge at this point, but I don't think it's healthy when Washington, joins a conference and they're got to play in North Carolina and Florida every week. You're sending your women's soccer team across the country or men's tennis team across the country. I just don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. So you'd like to see something put together more regionally, but I don't know what that answer is at this point.
Well, and I know you have something else to get here in about 2 or 3 minutes, but since you know about the history and tradition of Washington and what they I guess what they represent in many ways athletically and academically, some of the schools that were a part of the Southwest Conference, although a lot of them have left now. Do you see them in any way as someone that could be a good match if, in fact, the Big 12 was to grow?
Yeah, it could be. It could very well be. I know, back when Larry Scott first got to the Pac-10, I think at that point he was having a lot of discussions with the schools in Texas and in the Midwest. So yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities from institutions in the Big 12 with the University of Washington. It's not the greatest fit geographically, but again, from an institutional standpoint, there are some similarities and some synergies there. So that could be something that would make some sense.
Kyle, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Hopefully there is kind of a calming effect or a little bit of peace and quiet with college athletics and the landscape. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. Appreciate you having me.
Kyle Kallander, he's the commissioner of the Big South Conference. 25 or 6 years there. He was the last commissioner of the Southwest Conference and watched as that thing was going down and did everything he could, as he mentioned. And I thought it would be kind of an interesting part, a different perspective of somebody that saw a conference that he was a part of, brought in to try to at least stabilize it until it was over, and watched that transition as well.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there.